Three, two, one. And good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. This is Darrion Weems, CEO of J&S Drayage, Singh, COO of J&S Drayage, and we are here this day to talk to you really about a couple things. We've got port controversy coming out of Seattle there. Is the port empty? Are there ships there? We're going to be here to talk about it. Also, a little bit more news about AI and jobs kind of in the freight world in general. And then a little bit of info about the West Coast ports and the effects of tariffs on them kind of moving forward here. So I got a full docket here. Stick around. So, Tal, welcome in for another week here, brother. How's the week going? How you doing?
Good, Darrion. Great week. Well, actually, was the start of the month. Last month was amazing. Busy for us, and with all this tariff craziness, I think by now we should all know how Trump rolls. Right? He creates all this panic, which is good for business, as long as you kind of shift your focus from this part of the business to the other part of the business. Right? As long as you're moving in the right direction, where Trump and I guess Elon Musk and these boys are rolling. Yeah, yep. So let's get into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think we've been, I think the stuff is starting to. A lot of the headlines we're starting to see now is stuff that I think we've been talking about internally at J&S Drayage for months now, right? I'm always kind of, and we're always talking about the data that we're seeing. Kind of, some of it is lagging, some of it is leading in a way, and so it's always interesting to see how the media cycles are starting to catch up with the things that we kind of talk about internally in some of our meetings. So, this week been a interesting week. We're really trying to hammer down some of the costs, right? And kind of prepare us for this interesting moment of volatility that we're going to go through. We've kind of spoken internally, even if the tariffs work themselves out today, right? There's going to be, since, we've had almost a month of these things being on. I think Liberation Day was April 1st, right? Or April 2nd. And so uh, there would be 45 days of kind of reduced volumes, really, if they, no matter what happens, if they came to an agreement today. Trying to really hammer down the costs, reduce costs where we can, and then start to understand the unit economics really around every pool, right? And I don't think this is some stuff that you guys have done in the past, but we're putting together these things first in figuring out kind of the profitability between each of the segments, right? So obviously we do drayage, we do over the road, dry van stuff, and we do warehousing. And really that first point that we got hammered out, and I shared some of that stuff with you and Mr. Tor last week, was like, yeah, this is revenue per port driver, per long haul driver. This is gross profit per port driver, per long haul driver, right? And I think moving forward, we're going to be able to get even a more granular look at kind of what the profitability per truck, and then we can start to play around with, like, okay, what is a better fuel efficiency? How does implementing driver scorecards across this stuff kind of save us money on fuel and on different kind of DOT violations? So it's an interesting week. I also, as well as, like, continuing to push our own boundaries on, like, how safe we could be, right? And really upping our safety standards and ensuring that our compliance is really world class. So interesting week here. So obviously I think you've seen everyone's seen kind of some of those viral posts and images of people talking about the port of Seattle being empty, right? And they were even sharing some of these. I've the Port of Seattle is kind of what we're talking about today, but also I saw people kind of making the same statement for the ports of LA and sharing similar pictures there. And it's been kind of interesting to see the reactions to all of them, right? Like, there's some people that are like doom and gloom. And just to be frank, like, it is kind of a spooky situation and there is going to be pain, right? But there's people that are looking at it and just taking the most extreme stance,
Yeah.
like in one way or the other. And then there's people who are being very thoughtful, I think, around, you know, when they see these pictures, trying to contextualize it a little bit, right? And so the one thing that I've been kind of doing in light of this, right? Because in these moments, it's very difficult to get like good data
Yeah.
to make decisions. And so the thing that I've been doing, and it's a thing that I posted, because one of our head dispatch guys at the port, he posted kind of like one of these things about the Seattle port being empty as well. And so what I did was I went in and I just kind of posted some of the sources that I'm looking at to kind of keep my eye on what volumes could and should look like, right? And one of those is it's a service called, I think it's called Vessel Finder, right? I just have a link to it in my kind of spots. But what you can do on there is you can track all of the voyages, right, for all of the ships. And this is like every kind of ship, tugboats and freaking non-commercial ships, but also the container ships, which I think is most relevant to us. And you can see there's still volume coming right now. Like there's no Chinese ships coming, right? But there's ships coming from all other places in the world that are kind of rolling through these ports. And then there's another thing you can do on there, which is you can kind of look at the kind of at a port level, and you can see the ship arrivals, right? And so I've been really keeping my eye on the ship arrivals, right? And so I think at the port of Oakland right now, there's probably 35 ships, right? And the interesting thing to take note of is next week, I think there's only supposed to be 12 of those ships, right, that are going to be there.
Yeah.
And so, are there zero ships? And even at the Seattle port, right?
Yeah.
The picture that they showed was not the one that went viral. It was not the most honest depiction, right? Because if you kind of zoom in and you look over to the side, you kind of can see a ship, and then they had other people kind of coming under in the comments posting, which is how I found Vessel Finder posting like, no, actually, there's X amount of ships there that are unloading, and this picture is kind of disingenuous on some level, and so that's really kind of what I've been seeing. So
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on the where you get your information from, right? And one picture or a video can go viral, and you might think there's no ships there, right? But definitely, guys, look into who you're getting your news from. Is definitely a good point there. Vessel Finder, right? Vesselfinder.com. Yeah, we can just pull it up right now. These ships. Let me see if I can share my screen here real quick. Alicia, are you able to share your screen? Yeah, try it. I
sure,
think.
I can pull it up here. A little Vessel Finder here.
Yep, I got it right here. Yep. Can you
There
see
we go.
the screen? Yep. So within the last 24 hours, there's 8 ships are expected to arrive in the next 30 days. I mean, the 23 vessels have arrived in the last 24 hours. So which means a big drop in numbers. Definitely that will. I think the next few weeks are going to be very interesting, and we'll keep you guys updated on our channels at J&S. And real time updates. We'll start dropping some updates on X, real time updates on what's going on there. Um, but yeah, definitely something to watch for. Since January, about 2.78 trillion have been invested in manufacturing and supply chain. So that's I'm really tracking that on where these contracts end up landing. There's people are thinking that, oh, the business might slow down, but yeah, but if you can make a shift from one part of the business to another part of the business really fast, I think you're going to be positioning yourself to be successful, rather than if you wait it out and thinking you don't have work, right? Meaning you might have to switch some of your drayage truck like we do. We can overnight, turn that switch off and on to shift our trucks back and forth from drayage to the long haul, right? Because we have teams in both of the areas. And I think another thing that does definitely help us is with this whole news, there's we're seeing a big demand in our warehousing requests, right? And we have some partners that are doing custom bonded, food grade, and stuff like that. So they're also seeing a big jump on warehouse requests. So, what is your take on the news that Trump dropped? He was like naming every CEO and then miss, how much Hyundai is doing, millions and billions of dollars. So, did you watch? Were you able to get a chance to watch that?
I have not, but we did we I wrote an article about this. I think that we posted on LinkedIn maybe about a month ago, right? And the whole crux of the article was I think how reindustrialization was going to start affecting our country. Obviously, this is stuff that's not like we're years away from seeing the benefits of some of this reindustrialization, right? Because it's going to take, like at best 2 years probably to spin up some of these factories and to get them going and then to get the supply chains for these factories going. But the thing, the overarching theme of the article that I wrote was we're getting a lot of investment. And then I outlined what I thought to be like kind of key corridors, right, for what was going to happen with, uh, the supply chains within them, right? So one that's going to be definitely interesting is going to be the supply chain around a lot of the chips and data center stuff, right? And so all of that stuff is gonna be consolidated in very particular lanes, and then there's gonna be a supply chain around a lot of the car stuff, right? And that's gonna be consolidated in very particular lanes, right? And so maybe we can link back to that article so people can kind of check that out. But yeah, we're gonna see a lot of reinvestment. We're gonna see like new interesting lanes open up that require really just a lot of back and forth of different goods and services in order to kind of keep these factories up and rolling and moving in the right direction. You talked a little bit earlier. I kind of want to go back to that point of like pivoting, right? Being able to kind of pivot your business, right? And so, we've had our eyes on this stuff really from like the first, I would say around like late February, middle February, March.
Yeah,
We've been like very focused on like, this is probably going to hurt, right?
yeah.
Here's the data. The data says we might get punched in the face. And so we should maybe start to diversify our customer bases a little bit more than they are. And so in the way that we did that was going out and really focusing and trying to spend a lot more attention on like very specific types of commodities that may or may not be affected by some of this tariff stuff happening. And this is like from America going out, right? Yes, exports. And so I think, because of that, we've kind of got um, a bigger contract that starts here in a couple of weeks that's gonna at least smooth over a lot of it's still gonna hurt, but like,
Lost import volume.
yeah, so it's still gonna hurt, but obviously we're not gonna go to zero on a lot of these routes. And then we have a really kind of like a pipeline of a couple companies that we're working through right now that I think we'll be able to work on that are gonna really allow us to increase that capacity. And we may even like we could be sitting here 30 days from now, like being more busy than we were a month and a half ago, right? Which would be I hope that that is the case, right? And that would be kind of a good thing. So yeah,
Shout out to our team, man, for grinding since start of the year, man. We and you saw it long coming from the beginning of the year. Hey, things are not like a lot of people voted for Trump and thinking, hey, things are gonna be great. But a lot of times they're not. He's trying to do the right thing by fixing a lot of the problems like immigration and some of the laws that were hurting the economy. But yeah, it's definitely gonna get worse before it gets better for overall the U.S. economy. And there's many factors there. But yeah, man, shout out to our team for hustling, launching a lot of great projects early on the year that we've done, diversifying into other areas of our focus. And again, a lot of those 90% of our projects failed, but it's just those one or two projects that are gonna, get us the volume that we need to keep our trucks moving, our drivers moving. Because at the end of the day, they we have a responsibility to, 100 families are dependent on our what we do, right? So yeah, um, appreciate to all the dispatchers and the team that we have in place.
yeah, man. Shouts out to everybody. And then just one more little data source for anyone who's interested. There's a company called Vision API. And what they do is they track the container volume, and you can kind of go on there. Now they have a section in their website that you can go to that just tracks kind of the week over week, month over month, and then they compare it to the year over year last year container growth in total containers worldwide, and then in container volume for import into America. And so people can kind of go and check out those data sources. It's a interesting tool, and it's something that we're going to kind of build tools into in order to kind of make it easier for our dispatch guys to track containers in the future, and we'll be able to just kind of throw it. Yeah, there they go right there. So I think if you go to the resources hub right there, I have a link that's going like kind of like straight to it, and then go to news maybe. Yeah, maybe. Oh yeah, and then go scroll up, and then that yeah, right there it says Global Ocean Bookings Tracker, right? And so if you click on that, you'll be able to see, um, and then you can scroll down, and you'll be able to see kind of the volumes there, right?
Right.
And so we've had yeah, and they do a good job of kind of laying it out pretty. You could get more granular if you API into it and start to build the data that you want, right? So one thing that you could probably do here is you could probably go and get their API and then get very granular data of destinations to other destinations, right? Which I think would be helpful for if someone says like operating out of the, you know, New Jersey port or whatever, or for us at Oakland, right? And so anyone who's interested can kind of check that out. And, I think it's a good tool, and it's something that helped us at least somewhat stay you know slightly more informed in these times and kind of make slightly better decisions. So very cool. Well, our AI is in the news, it seems like, almost consistently, constantly. And it seems like this week there's a big kind of to do about AI and kind of freight brokerage, right? And really around like automation that helps, right? I think is the notion and the framework that we're looking through. Um, and I think the interesting thing is like, they asked a bunch of brokers, is like, if you could automate parts of your job, what would you choose and why, right? And they kind of go on and talk about kind of how freight brokers spend like 50 to 70% of their day on different repetitive tasks, right? Quoting, posting loads, right? Paperwork, carry giving, kind of getting and receiving updates from carriers, right? And again, this is kind of one of those things that we've been working on for a while now. Now, because of this whole tariff situation, we've kind of had to leave some of these things to focus on selling more, right?
Yeah.
But we're literally building all of this stuff in real time right now, so it's very fun to see it kind of coming to fruition in other places as well. I don't know if you remember, Tal, but like the first conversation that I had with everybody, right? Um, the conversation was somewhere along the lines of, "Hey guys, AI is coming, right?
Yeah.
And the goal is not to eliminate everyone's jobs with AI. The goal is how do we make everyone's jobs easier to do? How do yes, more efficient, and then how do we elevate the human element of this thing, right? Like it can't, you know, everyone has a lot of value that they could bring as like a human being. And if all people are doing is like posting in spreadsheets all day, or like typing repetitive emails, right? Then I would argue that that's not like maximum human flourishing, right? To me, maximum human flourishing looks like engaging with other humans and like solving problems and building like that relational rapport amongst people, right? Which I think leads to stronger bonds, right, between customers, but also just like to happier people kind of on the job. So
I'll share a quick examples, right? Like what is the few tasks that take the most time overall? And let's just talk about supply chain and be in other fields as well, right? One was email, right? Getting AI into emails, helping you draft up emails, right? And Second thing was AI in Samsara, right? So they just recently rolled out. Usually before, if you let's say you got 100 trucks, one by one, how are you going to go check who has a check engine light code, right? Now it's just one click. You just ask the Samsara AI, hey, give me all the trucks that have check engine lights. Early morning, our compliance guy can check that and call those drivers. Because a lot of times, drivers have to deliver a load and they'll be like, okay, I'll get it done later. But some of those could be high priority that should not be moving on the road, right? So with one click, you get that data report rate. I mean, those are just some of the examples early on, and I only think it's going to get better day to day. Your accounting, your compliance, your dispatchers. There's a lot of tools that are being rolled out over the last year, right? But I definitely think, like I mean, you do a great job on sharing some of the tools overall with our team to utilize AI into your day to day to do your job better. Because again, that means we're be able to service our customers quick. We're able to service more customers overall. Our customers are going to be if your customers are happy, hey, you will get more with business than your competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, there's a couple of these things that like I said, we've been working through and working on, right? One of the things that we got implemented into long haul, which was like a very easy thing to help people do data entry into spreadsheets, right? And the funny thing is, like, I share these tools and I'm even building out the workflows. And this is just like a candid moment. People still aren't using it as much as they should use it, right? Like, there's a thing that happened, I don't know if it was last week, but there was an issue where like a load wasn't entered into the spreadsheet properly, and a shipment was missed, right?
Yeah,
And so I call one of the dispatch. I'm like, how did that happen? And then I go and I check, and they're not using the spreadsheet that they should be using. And when I go and I compare the two spreadsheets, right? The human one is like not updated as fast, and it's got errors in it, right? And then the AI one is flawless. It's perfect.
yeah,
It got exactly right what the human got wrong in the loop there, right? And so it's like even me, who's like super ahead of the trend, ahead of the curve on a lot of these things, and I'm doing everything that I can to get people to
yeah,
implement these tools, right? It's still difficult because people are they're just comfortable in the way that they've been working, right? And what I found out in that process, it was like the spreadsheet doesn't look the same, right? And so it's like, oh, well, this is how the spreadsheet looked before. And I'm like, okay, guys, understood, got it. But do you want to spend all of your time putting data into a spreadsheet, or do you just want to ensure the accuracy of the spreadsheet, which is going to take you orders of magnitude less time so that we could then get on to doing higher order tasks? And so even here with us, we're doing a good job, right? And we're ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff. We're still not maximizing as much as we should, right? And so, you know, there's so much in the pipeline of what kind of we're building. It would be too much to even unleash upon the social media world, right? But there's so much that you can do today, right now,
yeah.
and you don't even have to be super technical. Like, I'm not a technical person at all in terms of technology and coding and development, but I love technology and I follow these technologies very closely, and I use them all the time. And whenever something new comes out, I just use it. Like, I find a way to figure it out and learn how to use it. And ultimately,
How can this save my life? Save time for me,
100% is I'm the like, I work really hard, right?
Yeah,
But I also like, I don't think that there's, and I tell some people this, I don't think that there's just blanket virtue in just like working hard. Like, if you're working really hard but you're doing the wrong things, like, I
true.
don't really think that there's any virtue in that, right? I think there's even more virtue in the person who gets more done with less time and is like more refreshed at the end of the day, right? Versus someone who is grinding it out, doing hundreds of hours of like stuff that doesn't need to get done so that they can prove that they work hard. And so I think that, when you think about the overall trend of like what's going to happen with AI and how humans are going to be engaging with it. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things is we as human beings are just so accustomed to working in certain ways, or we want the information to kind of look and be a certain way.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be that kind of disconnect there. Well, in line with kind of our first topic there, there's going to be some kind of West Coast port disruption there happening. Our producer dropped some stuff for us there, um, around how, there we go. We got an article from New York Times kind of talking us through so we got an article from New York Times 2 days ago. Today is May 1st, talking about the port disruptions on the West Coast, right? And again, we've been talking about this stuff internally for 70 days, right? So a little bit ahead of the curve on it, right? But there is going to be a fair amount of disruption. And I know I've been talking a lot here, Tall. So maybe I'll let you get this West Coast ports.
Yeah. 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 So I will say this: we're about a couple of weeks away where we are gonna definitely see the results of, um, you know, I mean, overall, if you summarize the news, what's been happening is China factories are shutting down. There's definitely slowdown of shipping imports to the US, meaning less ships, less containers. That was supposed to be hitting first week of May, right? And we're about a week away. So, what I would say is a lot of my buddies in Port of Oakland, yeah, they're definitely already seeing a slowdown. But again, you got to do a great job on shifting focus, diversifying your services, right? And just kind of staying ahead of the curve. Um, more exports now. You might have to focus on different customers, right? Or you got to get out there. You got to make more calls. You got to go meet more customers than you would normally be, because the way the drayage business works is you get leads coming in, right? There's very little going outbound and going chasing these leads, or there's a load boat, right? So now we've already started making big shift changes on what we used to do in the past onto what this year what we've been doing, right? So yeah, I definitely think there's gonna be a big drop in port volume, but again, I would advise everybody out there that's gonna have trucks sitting now, that are not gonna have enough volume work for their drivers. We feel that effect too. It's not like we're bulletproof, right? We're also feeling that effect. Again, we got to be able to shift our focus real fast. If you don't, trucks are going to sit.
Yeah. And I think, we kind of touched on it a little bit in the first segment, right? But are we seeing it yet? No, but we're about to, right? And the reason we're not seeing it yet is, how long, Tall, does it take for a ship to come from overseas to get to Hebrew? 30 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so these tariffs went into effect about 30 days ago, which means that we're getting the last ships today, maybe this week, of ships that made it out without those tariffs, right? That were able to get on the water in time. But everything here on out is going to be the is going to show kind of what's actually happening there with the imports, right? And so there's been like massive amount of front loading all of the volume, right, in order to get stuff into the country, which we've seen kind of anecdotally in our business, right, where it's like our warehouse is booked out. It's filled to the brim, packed to capacity, which is a good thing, but also, and this is the thing, whenever we started getting all those warehouse inquiries, we're like, I think the resounding thing that we were talking about is like, a lot of this is probably front loading. We talked with the Arrive guys about this, right, when they were here. A lot of this is probably going to be front loading, right? And there's going to probably be less volume here down the line as everyone's afraid of the tariffs. And so some of that stuff has materialized. Some of it is, you know, the warehouses are packed to the brim, and maybe there's not going to be as much container volume, right? And so from our first segment, I think you showed the vessel finder. I think we had 50 ships in the last month, or maybe 20, and now there's going to be eight, right? Right, that are forecasted, right? And so that's going to have a very big effect on the volumes, right? And like you're saying, a lot of your friends that are operating similar businesses, they don't have work, and luckily we have a ton of work, because we were able to kind of get ahead of some of this, but we're not going to be unaffected by it, right? So
Again, one
yeah, dude.
proof, right? We're definitely already seeing a big drop in our input volumes, but we were able to kind of shift some of our trucks in other areas, right? So few other things that were interesting in the news was one, UPS was about to cut 20,000 jobs. There's going to be definitely toy shortages. Back to school is going to be big. What I was hearing in the news, that what that means is going to be a shortage and the price hike on stuff that's already there. So a lot of people think that Amazon is big. Yeah, Amazon's big, but it's mostly everyday people that are selling on Amazon, right? They're seeing a big loss in their business, right? And there was another company that makes bulbs. I forgot the company name. I was looking at the Twitter feed, and they were just kind of going back and forth. They're like, "Hey, our CEOs don't even make that much. How much tariff money that we paid this month?" Meaning, yeah, they're definitely losing a lot of money right now. There's not as big as profit as they were used to be making. So it's going to be very interesting seeing a lot of big companies are also feeling the pain right now.
Yeah, I mean the shortages are gonna be here. They're gonna come. The interesting thing is, I don't even know if they're gonna be able to raise the prices on this stuff, because a thing that we've been tracking for a while is like consumer sentiment, right? And so consumer debt is at the highest it's ever been, and now people are starting to default on a lot of that debt. So me, you, and Mr. Tor talked maybe 2 months ago, right, about credit card debt and the default rates on that debt. Also, the default rates on FHA mortgages, right? Just as like a leading indicator for consumer sentiment, right? And so even like there's not going to be as much products on the shelves, but I don't even know if these retailers are going to be able to raise the prices, because who can pay for it, right? Like, the average, I think, let's say the average American probably had like $1,000 in savings, right?
Yeah.
Wages have not been rising, and now they're starting to default on all of their debt, right? And so, you know, does that mean that they can raise prices? Probably doesn't, right? Probably means that there's going to be some level of give and take that's going to have to happen, and the companies are going to have to, on some level, eat that stuff. I can't remember what company. It might have been Walmart, or it was some like consumer facing company, because I track a lot of the earnings of a lot of these companies. Essentially what their CEO said, or their CFO says, like, we don't know if we're going to be able to pass on any costs of this stuff. Like, it's just, like, who can afford it? Who's going to be able to do it?
Yeah, they're definitely raising prices, and what we're seeing is now the tariff fees on a lot of the stuff that they're selling. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of months. But yeah, a lot of my buddies we're out here in Northern California near Silicon Valley. So a lot of my buddies are in the tech world, right? And they're seeing a lot of layoffs, and their friends that got laid off in January and they still can't find a job, right? Meaning you got to adapt fast, you got to learn sales, you got to learn AI, because otherwise all these layoffs are happening, and what do we already see that they're not hiring. They don't need as many engineers. Their engineers are being much more productive using AI, right? And I mean, you could probably talk more about Los Angeles since you're down south on the film market and the LA ports and stuff. But over here in the Northern California, I mean, it's a big tech world, right? But
Yep. I mean, that trend was already kind of coming. That was part of the AI thing. Tech companies were going to just need fewer engineers. I nerd out on all this stuff, so I listen to all of these CEOs of all of these companies talk, and I try to glean, like, where's the world heading, right? And so 6 months ago, everyone was saying next year AI is going to be writing 40% of the code at our company, right? Right. The thing that they're saying today is next year, AI is going to write 95% of the code at our companies, right? And so what does that mean? That means that you don't need as many engineers, right? You don't need to hire as many, right? And certainly, like if times get hard, now you can fire a lot more because you just don't need as many of them to do the same, if not more work, right? So yeah, we're definitely kind of entering into a period of destabilization. I think the GDP officially contracted last quarter, which is kind of the tell on recession, if it's coming, how it's coming. And so, all of the data is kind of baked in, right? I share with you guys that GDP now, those GDP now forecasts, right? You and Mr. Thor oftentimes, right? And yeah, we're in the situation that we're in, but we're here, we're fighting, we're getting it done. We're doing what we need to do in order to stay alive and then eventually thrive. So yeah.
All right, let's take some questions, I guess. Felicia, do we have any questions, or we can hit up some of these topics that you have laid out? What do you hit up on the AI automation? Yeah, there was a news about the Seattle ports being empty, so that was already debunked by the news that there's not less ships, but that doesn't mean it's empty. All right, right. What was the other one? So definitely something interesting to watch on this imports tariff news. Trump already backed down with the big autos to 25%, I believe. Some tariffs are still 100. So there's a big question that I keep on getting from a lot of customers and people we work with. What is actually true? How much tariff there's going to be? What does that mean? The parts are going to rise? Does it mean the truck prices? Does that mean car prices are going to rise? So definitely from what I've talked to the dealers that we work with, the parts are already, we're seeing a big rise in this coming year. Truck prices could rise depending on what you buy new versus used. But I think the used market might still small, but the new truck price will definitely be going up from what I've heard. Yeah. Anything take on there, Darren?
Not necessarily. I mean, yeah,
If
I don't really have anything to add there.
EVs 100%, batteries 25%, steel, aluminum 25%, semiconductors 50%. So every industry, I guess they have a different 25 to 100% range. So from what our latest news that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think the thing that they were focusing on is like trying to make it so that, like do we want to it's like what do we want to reshore as a country, right? Do we want to reshore textile manufacturing? No.
Yeah.
Do we want to make Nikes in America? No. Do we want to make chips? Yeah. Do we want to make automobiles? Yes, right? Do we want to be able to produce some of these things that are necessary just for the future of the world that we're going to live in, right? Whether that's lithium ion batteries, whether that's, like I said, chips, whether that's other kind of critical components that go into a lot of this stuff. Pharmaceuticals is another one, right? And so I think what we're starting to see is, from the perspective of the administration, what does critical look like and what do we actually want to have reshored here? There's also the thing, which is like, and China's doing this also, where they're capitulating on some of what they're saying as well, right? Where they're like, actually, no, we're not going to tariff that thing as high. We're not going to do this as high. And I think this is all just part of kind of the grand negotiation that's going to need to happen here between two very big countries, number one, number two economy, two leaders that like probably got a little bit of ego going on, right? And feel like they're the guy and they're the one that should be kind of kowtowed to. So yeah, there was a funny article that came out this week where I think early in the week Trump was saying, "Yeah, we're talking to China," but then China came out and they're like, "No, they're not talking to us, right? What are you talking about, right?" And in that whole kind of chaos and fiasco, there was someone posted a picture of like the Chinese delegation, and there was like a big delegation, 10, 12 people that were like coming and going from the Treasury Department. What that tells me is is there's like real politic going on here where it's like you have to protect your cards because the Chinese leaders they're talking to their population and they have to look strong to their population. They have to look like they're doing everything that they can to like fight the American, whatever they are, right? Whoever the enemy is, right? And we're doing the same, right? We have to look like we're in control and Trump's in control and Trump is not gonna capitulate to, Chinese influence. And so it's a whole thing. It's happening. It's happening in real time. Sucks that it has to be happening right now, but it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Right. Alicia, do we got anything else? Any questions?
Spectacular. Tal, you wanna get us out of here? You want me to get us out of here? You usually do a better job of ending it than I do. You ask for people's
Yeah.
feedback.
So I think we're as sick of hearing the news. Another thing was 90% of the news is negative, and we don't want to become just another news channel. We want to provide real time, on the ground dates in the industry, in the supply chain, warehousing, trucking. Right? We are as trying to become a world class company, and what does that look like? Right. So Darrion bringing his experience from the NFL has had a great effect on me and our team, right? And I think there's a lot to learn and set example of for the younger generation and the future generations that are looking as us as mentors, role models, or whatever that may be. So I definitely want to share the good and the bad, right? More good than the bad in the industry. And I think as a leader, Darrion, and our team, we're trying our best to always stay positive, no matter what happens, no matter how crazy the news gets. I think the one great thing our company does is staying positive, no matter what the chaos and what happens in the news, right? So again, all we can control on our end is do to the best of our ability, take care of our customers, take care of our people, right? And I definitely think I want to just send a positive note out there to everybody out there. And we'll love to hear your feedback. Hey, what we can improve on. What would you like to hear from us, right? Is there something you guys are facing pain points in your business, in the supply chain, warehousing, what that may be? And we'll love to share our feedback on our struggles, right? Because if we're able to share, like we said early on, we lost many projects, and most of those failed. But if you don't take risks and if you don't launch those projects, meaning testing out different things in the business, right? Shifting focus into something that you might be uncomfortable, but you got to keep grinding it out, man. Our team has been putting in the work, even on weekends. We're learning about AI. We're learning more about sales. We're learning how to be better, providing service to our customers, right? So again, end of the day, we're all doing our part, and we'd love to share more positive things with you guys. So yeah, appreciate you. Shift happens, Darrion, Tal, and Alicia. Appreciate you. Thank you.
What'd you say there, Alicia? Sorry. Thanks for watching. Yeah, got you. Once again, this is Darrion Weems.
Once again, this is Tal Singh. Shift happens. Thank you guys. Have a great month.
Yes, have a good one.